and quite. Got it. Welcome, everybody. Today is April 4th, 2023, and this is the Beacon Hill Council Community Meeting. My name is Maria Batiola. I'm going to give an update on several topic areas that we do advocacy on. The first is the update on the air noise pollution. I'm going to have Megan help me with giving feedback on the March 15 meeting we had with the Port of Seattle. There were 5 of us organizations: Beacon Hill Council, El Centro de la Raza, King County International Airport, Community Coalition, White Skies Puget Sound, and 350 Seattle Aviation Team. And the meeting, the South, it's called South Seattle Table, Round Table. It was a meeting that was prompted by our writing to the port commissioners that their strategic plan does not cover impacted communities like us that have been experiencing environmental health and climate harms. So Megan, if you can share some of the observations you have and the kind of input you gave to the meeting, that would be great.
Sure. The meeting had not as many community representatives. It had a lot of government representatives and some industry representatives. We started the meeting off by reading our letter about the harms that are being experienced. And then we broke out into 4 different breakout groups at 4 different tables, the themes being air and noise pollution, the SAMP that is being proposed, economic impacts, and the other was, I think, like kind of what we want for community engagement or communications with the port. I think the biggest things were, one, it was presented as this is just a first of many conversations. I think it was kind of confusing as to who was invited and what they were expecting for kind of community participation. And I think the thing that we all seemed to kind of feel was when the topics were discussed at the end, there was kind of selectivity about what was highlighted. Some of the major concerns we had weren't kind of pulled out as important features, like that we would like an EIS review for the SAMP. Maria, do you remember what some of those other things were that?
Yeah. For everybody, SAMP is Sustainable Airport Master Plan. It's the expansion project proposal for the airport. That's one. And the other is, we kept saying we're in climate times. We only have 8 years to act. So we had a sense of urgency, and that was not communicated in the summary at the end of the meeting.
Right.
So so there were some good things that happened. I had direct communication with Commissioner Toshiko Hasegawa, who lives in Beacon Hill. And I said, we need to have a meeting with you, because some of the things we don't need a big group of people to be able to deal with it. And she said, yes, so need to follow up with that. And we're waiting for the report to see how they would characterize what had happened. But definitely there were not a lot of community people. I mean, thank goodness our 5 organizations showed up. But if they had told us to bring more community people, we would have. But it felt like there was probably going to be a lot of other people. So for example, the Duwamish River Community Coalition, Paulina Lopez was there. And she just came to me and she just said, I'm so glad you guys are here, because this is your issue, kind of a thing. They work on air quality issues also.
Yeah, maybe to give an example, I was at a table of about 12 people and I was the only community representative at that whole table.
Yeah, because we were rotating. I was also in several tables, and sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 3 community reps. So it's it'll be interesting what they write in the report and how we can respond to that. So so that's the first item, the continuing work on air and noise pollution. So in Olympia right now, we have what they call the long session, which is really planning for passing laws for the biennium. So 2023 and 2024, because next year it's going to be a short session wherein there's just basically adjustments to the budget and some bills. But I want to bring to your attention two bills on the air and noise. So there is an effort to locate a new airport under the Commercial Aircraft Coordinating Commission. And Senate Bill 5162 was attempting to sunset that so that they could get a new study group in, because what had happened is that the legislation required the coordinating commission to come up with one recommendation for an airport, a new airport site, but they're winning it from 9 to 3 to 1, the 3 sites, 2 in Pierce County and 1 in Thurston County. Basically, all of those, the 2 counties said they don't want the airport. So they needed to sunset it, have a new study group. And my concern was that that study group is only going to look at either expanding a current airport or building a new airport to address the increase in aviation. So I submitted an amendment that would basically say this to study the transportation capacity, the transportation system capacity that includes air, roads, rail, and water, and out of that come up with some options. And so we had a lot of people helping us, like Earth Justice, King County International Airport Community Coalition. They have a connection with Build Black Better. Front and Centered was helping. There were a lot of groups and lobbyists that were helping us, but basically we're not able to get that on the Senate side. So we started running after the House side, and really was not successful. But as a result of it, Washington State Department of Transportation called me and they said they're looking at what is called multimodal planning, which is different kinds of transportation along I-5. And I said, but what's missing is still east-west. And so I'm contacting some people I know in Yakima to see if we can get connected with some of their electorates to figure out if there could be some money that could be allocated. Today is actually the last day to pull bills out for vote on the floor. And so another bill that was really important to our sister organizing in King County, in the Duwamish area, the King County International Airport Community Coalition was really working hard to get House Bill 1554 passed, and that is lead in aviation fuel. It's a very, in my opinion, it's a conservative bill, because basically what it's saying is that, there has to be education with the airport operators, and then of course with the community and so forth. But ultimately, as late as 2:30 this afternoon, then 4 o'clock, people were trying to pull it out and the bill died, because pulling it out means there's a whole bunch of bills that are competing to get to be voted on the floor. It's a long process. And one of these days, if you guys want, we can do an educational on how a bill becomes a law. So that was kind of disappointing. But I think I think that's something that we're going to keep lifting up. So the lead is in fuel used for what we call small piston operated airplanes. So Renton Airport, King County International Airport, some of the planes have that. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Kevin, but at some point, if there's a navigation you could do to help get connected us with King County International Airport to see what can be done, like the educational piece, that would be so helpful to our communities. Also, there's a University of Washington researcher, Dr. Esther Min, who reached out, and there's a small group of them that are interested in testing the blood of children and so forth to see if there's lead in their bodies. because the lead doesn't totally burn out. It just dissipates within the air. On the Climate Commitments Act, that is the cap and trade for greenhouse gases / air pollution. There's a lot of money coming from it, and there is a proviso, there's a requirement in the bill that they need to spend or allocate at least 35% to help vulnerable communities. So we're waiting to see what that final profile in the budget is going to be. There's also middle housing that we were quite concerned with last year. We didn't have any bandwidth this year. So what middle housing is going to do is to automatically allow the building of, I think, 4 to 6 units within a lot. And basically what it did is it removed some of the appeal processes that we're able to see in the city of Seattle. So I have not had time to research where it is, but definitely will email that out. So that's our current work on air and noise pollution. On the positive side, El Centro de la Raza received a grant from the Environmental Justice Fund of the city to reach out to low-income oil heated homeowners to start getting them on a list, so that when the city starts having more money to convert these homes for low-income homeowners, they can have a ready list to go to. So if you know folks, please let us know. They're going to do their own outreach also. The second is El Centro also got funded to be able to do outreach for weatherization. And this is important because the two work hand in hand together. You know, if you convert your home to electric or as it is, and it's leaking, so you're not able to retain the heat, you can save more money if your house is, you know, if it's tighter and it's not leaking. On the Beacon Hill Council side, we received $55,000 to start planning for community resiliency. And it's going to be at 2 levels. One is at the neighborhood on the ground, so that we are going to ask, hopefully have an educational for homeowners, as well as who wants to collaborate with their neighbors on how to have resiliency within. This is for climate events, you know, for heat, when it's extreme weather, like for heat or cold, as well as for forest fires and loss of power. So as an example, Megan, who's with us, she is starting this with her own home, and we're going to have conversations about how do we engage the local neighborhood within a block or 2 blocks, so that there could be a collective resiliency for that. And the other track of it is to look at our institutions within Beacon Hill that serve people of color, particularly immigrants and refugees, to see if those buildings can be climate hub resiliency places. So the pilot that we're looking at to partner with is Bethany United Church of Christ, because they already have started on this pathway. And we're going to co-develop the educational and test it there, and then to bring it out to our community. So hopefully between our air and noise campaign and the outreach for the oil heated homes and for the climate resiliency, you'll see us tabling at different events through the summer. Let's see, 2 more things. The Filipino American National Historical Society has a grant from US Parks to do a historic landmarking in the state of Washington. So out of the 30 there were 20 sites in Western Washington, and they have chosen Jose Rizal Park to be nominated as a US Parks National Historic Site. So that's going through the city of Seattle right now to get their support, because they're the ones who operate the parks. And then the last thing is, as you know, our 4 organizations that have been collaborating, we received money from Best Start for Kids to be able to establish organizing for people of color around Fix the Harm campaign for the environmental health and climate harms around the 6 cities around the airport. So with that, all 6 of us will be commonly known as CTAC Stack for Justice, SeaTac Airport Community Coalition for Justice. So that's just a heads up. This is going to be rolled out during the month of April, which is going to have Earth Day. So there you go. 7:03, it's 7 o'clock. Any quick questions? I know it's a lot, but it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Comments, questions, or thoughts? Okay, I'm looking around. So we're doing our best to help our community be more resilient and stronger. And in the meantime, I'd like to welcome Lou Wilson, Saya Murayasu, and Sarah Welch. They just joined us. So welcome. Okay, and with that, I'm going to move to the 7 o'clock item, which is the engagement we've had with Seattle Department of Transportation. So I'm going to request Dee to help on this topic. So as background, as you may or may not know, there was organizing on 15th Avenue to be able to address the impacts of the North Bike Trail. And when we met with the SDOT director, Greg Spots, we said, hey, you know what, there's actually 5 issues that we have with SDOT. One is the communications on how that happened, the fact that your planning is myopic. You only look at what's you're going to hit, but not the impacts around the area. And by the way, we have a Beacon Hill Town Center plan that needs some love and respect, and that we're being used as a cut through and traffic calming. So we've had 2 meetings with SDOT, and Dee, if you can unmute yourself and show yourself and give us an update. So Dee and Peter and Kalia, they have a leadership team for the 15th Avenue Community Connectors that are working on this issue.
There we go. Sure. Hi. Yeah, we've been making some progress. So SDOT will be installing some safety elements and traffic calming elements along 15th Avenue South. They hope to do that this spring. So that would be really great. And then to do that, they will need to have no parking for the preparation of putting those elements in. So there will be some signs going up. They're going to go block by block. They need to do street sweeping and inspect the streets before they actually do any changes on the street. So you'll probably see flyers starting next week about that. And then our follow-up meetings with SDOT have been positive. We're continuing to focus on the impact that the no parking will have on the residents. And they are starting to meet with individual neighbors. We'll be focusing on doing a lot more than that. And then we'll be looking at having a community meeting to address the solutions that SDOT is coming up with. So stay tuned.
Any questions for Dee? Well, I want us to give them a hand because this is a lot of work that they've been doing, canvassing, checking in with neighbors, lifting up those who can't speak English. I mean, just so much work on their part. And I tell you, it's so, oh, this is fabulous. It's so important for this work because we have the middle, the bike lane that's going to go through Middle Beacon Hill and South Beacon Hill. So we need to fix some of the issues that we've been having before we engage in that planning.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. The next update is on Noji Gardens. So I'm just going to give you a big sketch of what's going on. So from the 15th Avenue meeting with Washington, not Washington, the SDOT, Seattle Department of Transportation Director, Greg Spots, we told him about Noji Gardens, wherein about 100 trees will be cut in a particular development if they don't change the design and the bad impact it will have on the Noji Gardens community. Noji Gardens is on the southeast side of Beacon Hill, as you go down on Myrtle, and it's right by MLK. So the initial Noji Gardens is 72 housing for low-income folks. And so those are the ones at risk of flooding, as well as heat impacts and so on, if the 100+ trees are cut. So they have a really good organizing team. Tiffany Burks is the chair of the Noji Gardens Homeowners Association. Alice Park is down there. You guys know Alice because she's on our environmental justice task force. And Elijah Smith, who's a seasoned organizer, is with them, as well as we have David Mooring, who's going to be talking about the tree ordinance coming up. So I'm just going to pause and see if there's any questions or updates on this. So trees are coming up a lot, because trees are part of the climate resiliency infrastructure that's necessary. Okay. And with that, moving forward, we're now running early. It's 7:09 and it's for 7:15. There's a tree canopy ordinance that is moving through the city of Seattle. And I've invited David Mooring to give us a briefing. He's been very good to us. We don't have the kind of capacity to track tree ordinances, as well as what's happening within the exceptional trees and so forth. So David's he's been helping us for I'd say about 6 years now, since the Mandatory Housing Affordability Act. Amy, if you can co-host David, that would be great. I'm trying to do it and I can't. Oh, excuse me, Deirdre, you're still with us, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Maria, could you just repeat the question? I missed it.
Can you co-host, please, David Mooring?
Thank you. I'm going to try.
Okay, David, you've got the floor.
Oh,
And
great.
share screen capacity.
Thank you, Maria. And I recognize several of you in the audience, so good to see you again. Maria asked me to do a quick rundown of the tree ordinance, and I hope that you can all see the screen, advocating for equitable urban forest. And I'm an architect, used to be a member of the Seattle Urban Forestry Commission meeting, and very concerned about making sure that we have equal amount of tree canopy, especially in the greater Duwamish area. And with a rough estimate, this kind of map kind of shows the lighter the green, obviously, the fewer tree canopy or the less tree canopy there is in the area. Of course, we all know the implications of that. And probably most of you probably know that in 2021, they did a reassessment of the tree canopy after 5 years using the same method. So it's a very reliable approach. And what you can kind of see on the left is that the Beacon Hill area canopy, we're the citywide, we're about 28%. If you look at everything, all the areas, the Beacon Hill area is kind of in that 15% range area. And also on the right, you'll see where the loss has been the greatest. And it's been District 2 has quite a bit of areas where the tree loss has been percentage-wise significant in the last 5 years. And with
David, you're moving a little fast. Can you go back to 2 slides back?
Okay.
Okay. This is an important slide for people to remember. If you can speak to this slide, please.
Yeah, so what you see here is a color coding of the different larger regions or larger neighborhood areas of the city of Seattle. And the darker the green, the heavier the tree canopy. So again, with city of Seattle averaging at about 28% canopy cover of acreage versus land area, about a third of the And our goal is, per the comp plan set back in 2007, to be at 30%. We all need to grow. What this shows is that the downtown Lake Union, and especially this large greater Duwamish area, has a very low tree canopy percentage, somewhere in the region between 12 to 15% when you average it out.
Thanks, David. And David's going to provide us with a PowerPoint so we can move through this. And is this the June 2022 LIDAR report?
Yes, that's correct. It was actually done in 2021, and it took them about a year to put it together.
Thank you.
But again, the same logic. The Discovery Park, a lot of trees, over 50% canopy in the Beacon Hill area, the greater Duwamish area, less than 25%. And again, for your district, this just shows the real math numbers. In the last 5 years, it measures the canopy today versus 5 years ago. The District 2 has lost 65 acres of tree canopy. And that is the second highest of all districts, including, of course, our District 1 being the most, with the right next to you. And this is all from the city of Seattle, from the report. Again, you would think in the last 5 years, the goal would be tried to increase the amount of canopy in our areas that are environmental justice is the priority. But again, we actually lost more canopy compared to the most advantaged areas by a few percentage points. So again, we're going in the wrong direction where we need to have the canopy. Once again, this other chart put together within the 2021-2022 report, again, shows that the change of canopy per the environmental justice areas need to have a much better attention on it, because the highest disadvantaged areas have lost the most canopy percentage-wise in the last 5 years. And of course, we all know the environmental issues of it and the correspondence of the tree canopy cover. Again, percentage-wise, and again with Beacon Hill in that range of less than 20% off and on different areas, and to the right, how much the surface temperature has increased during the hot season, where even within the same city you may have fluctuation as high as 15 to 20 degrees, just because of the tree canopy being vacant. So they actually charted it out, and again, kind of this arrow is kind of pointing where Beacon Hill area needs to be or is at, and we just need to get Beacon Hill planted with trees, so that arrow that you kind of see moves towards the right, and the temperatures start dropping. More canopy, in other words, means our temperatures will start to drop during the hot summer days. So what we'd like to see in the tree ordinance is especially items that are going to address the tree equity issues. Again, I would say that in order to meet the 30% canopy goal citywide, we're going to need at least 100,000 trees planted. And for the greater Duwamish Valley, at least 25,000 trees. And that number is based upon an average tree size. Some statistics show that there's roughly in every acre, there's about 80 trees. So you just kind of do the math on that. So this was a presentation that was delivered recently, March 29th, during the Land Use Committee. And part of this is because the Land Use Committee is going through several periods to share with the community, share with the city what changes they're planning to make. And what I'd like to do is highlight 3 items, at least, that I think are important for pretty much everybody in Seattle to take note of and perhaps ask for if you have a chance. And at the end of this, I'll also share how you can participate even this week if you have the time. Again, this slide was from the city, and basically what they identified as the major changes is rather than calling, some of you may know that trees are kind of identified as exceptional trees, which are large trees by their species. So that may include trees that are 30 inches diameter, or it may include even trees like a 12-inch in diameter, or even 6 inches in some species, because that species is considered special, like a smoke tree that just grows very slow and not quite as big. So the exceptional trees includes a range of trees depending on the species, and there's about 72 or 73 of those protected species. But what the city would like to do is abandon that approach and start using tree tiers. And so the first tier is something that really hasn't been, I'm not sure how many of you have any heritage trees around you. There's, I think, less than 300 heritage trees in this whole wide city. Those heritage trees had to go through an application where somebody said that the tree had historic significance or was just one of the largest species. A lot of these trees don't make it through. It started as a city transportation, just street trees. And there's about 133 street trees, and then they opened it up and started to accept trees on private property as well. So they're kind of recognizing this now as a top tier, and they have some other tiers here. Let's see if I get this. Oh, I may not have this described later. So I do have it described later. So one of the things was the tree tiers. They've also tried to drop. They're going to try dropping the threshold in terms of when a tree becomes exceptional, so that more trees are considered special tree protection when it comes down to reviewing projects for development, or a homeowner who'd like to remove a tree, for instance. They're also adding a new thing, this item 3 hardscape requirement, that I think is going to be harmful, and I'll explain that why shortly. And also they are now adding a requirement for replacing trees when they're hazardous, which hasn't been done before. So that's probably a good thing. And also adding more information in terms of mitigating tree loss. But there's a lot of things we should know that already the Seattle code allows for. If you have a large tree, say, for example, in this diagram, where there might be a large tree that's protected as an exceptional tree, they allow you to do several design manipulations where you can either decrease the side yard, rear yard setbacks by 50%. As you can kind of see, this drawing here has the particular property, and then these dashed lines would be the setback lines where you can't usually build within. But if you are able to push the built area around in order to protect the tree, that's something that you can do. And there's some other things that as well. As well as even add a floor when you're in a low-rise residential 2 zone. Any questions so far before I trot through here? Okay. So we kind of talked about the tiers. Yep.
Listen, when you're talking, any questions, that was a little fast. This is a lot of stuff. So if you can take down so you can see faces as to who may have questions. I don't know about you guys, but I myself struggle with this stuff. So if you can take it down, we can see everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see here. Stop share.
Yeah.
Got it.
Hi, everybody. This is a lot of stuff. So and David is building on this foundation. Do you have any questions? I know quite a number of you are into trees and green infrastructure in Beacon Hill.
I have a quick question regarding your relative percent canopy and highest disadvantage areas and second lowest disadvantage areas. What areas do you mean by that specifically?
Well, the city of Seattle has kind of done a mapping of precincts of which areas And I think Maria would probably even know more about how to answer this question correctly. But they've kind of mapped which areas have higher displacement risk. In other words, because of increasing land value or property assessments, that they might have a higher risk of being displaced, or their income levels may not be as high as in some areas of the city. So I think that's what they primarily use, as well as also other factors.
So Tanya, just to kind of, and everybody, just to layer this. So Beacon Hill is a product of redlining, right? Redlining is where you're not allowed to live because of your color. And it's also a product of displacement. So when the Japanese Americans were incarcerated and they came back, the families were able to settle in Beacon Hill. So you're talking about the Vietnam War, where we have a lot of Vietnamese, because our statistics are 40,000 plus people, about 73% people of color, close to 50%, if not more than 50%, are Asian Pacific Islanders. And then we have 10% African and African Americans. We have Somali refugees, a big in housing. Holly Park is mostly Somali from my understanding. And we have other African immigrants and refugees. And we also have Latino, about 10% Latino folks in Beacon Hill. So when you're looking at that collection, like in our neighborhood, we're part of the vulnerable Southeast Seattle neighborhood because of the income levels of education, social determinants. Social determinants are what contributes to a healthy life and lifespan. So along with the mapping, the race and social justice analysis that the city is doing, they also look at assets. So trees are an asset. That's why there's a mapping of what we don't have. So when you hear me or see in a letter that we're writing that we're in a tree desert, that's what's it about. And what David is trying to help us understand is that when we started work on the Mandatory Housing Affordability Act, the current tree ordinance that's in place was not being implemented. You know, there was no compliance programming going over there. So there was a drive to update that ordinance. And it sounds like a mixed bag, you know, in terms of what we're seeing. Now, there's the tree ordinance, and we also have an opportunity as a community to give a lot of input on the current Seattle comprehensive planning that's happening. So, you know, we want to learn together as a community to understand this. And we can always have a separate workshop on this because it is kind of really complicated. Any other questions or comments? Megan?
Good question. I just noticed in the park next to my kid's school, a number of trees have come down over the last year and 2 years. And I understand that a lot of the trees that do come down for hazardous are under parks. Is there anything that would be retroactive? Because I haven't seen any of those trees be replaced. I'm just curious.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is I think it's primarily the budget, and I'll be talking a little bit about the budget by parks to replace a tree. Any guess in terms of the 5-year cost to plant the tree and maintain it by watering during the hot summers? One tree. Any guesses? It's $4,000 per tree. Now, what they have budgeted, what I heard Parks present in November of last year, was being able to plant 600 trees citywide over 6 years. That is, I think, part of the crux of the problem of having trees, and they admitted they can't keep up with the amount of trees that are being lost and being able to plant new ones.
So the importance of this is that as a strategy, what we because this is happening in a neighborhood of mostly people of color, then one strategy is to frame it what it is, which is an environmental justice issue, so that we can go after Green New Deal dollars to get those trees planted in Beacon Hill. But it also means land, not unless we figure out and push the city to plant trees in city-owned land, like in parks, on right-of-ways, which is the sidewalks, and so forth. So I'm just noting, writing down notes where we can influence how we can be a healthier place. Any more questions? If not, we're going to go back to David's presentation. Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, so we're not going to spend too much time on a tier 1 category heritage trees because, as I learned from Josh Morris of what used to be the Seattle Audubon, now I think they're Seattle Birds something. I'm gonna. Anyway, we know that there's only 3/100ths of Seattle's trees are considered heritage, so it's really a minor drop. The bigger issue, I think, is these what used to be called, or still is called, unless this passes, is a tier 2 tree, exceptional trees. These are the larger trees again, the 73 species. They're special, they're native trees to the area. And what the city has proposed is, in the past, the default was like 30-inch diameter tree, which for a fir tree might be 40, 50 years old. But they're proposing to bring that down to 24 inches rather than 30. So that's going to add a few more trees, about 70,000 of Seattle's trees, into this exceptional category. But I'm going to tell you in a bit why that doesn't really matter. I'm not sure if there's a good analogy where you can invite more people to, let's say, an event, but if you're able to kick people out anyway at the end, you're really not inviting them. So that's probably not a good analogy, but we'll get to that. And what also has been added new, as I'm going to show a little bit later, in the past, you'd have to prove that you could not, I'm an architect, you'd have to prove that if you have a design, you cannot make that design work with the exceptional tree. Now there's an option that you will be able to pay a fee in lieu, kind of like where the MHA had a fee, instead of producing affordable housing, you could pay a fee to not produce affordable housing, and then have the city take that money and build affordable housing elsewhere. There's a similar concept which is being proposed for tree removal by paying a fee. The other two categories are non-exceptional, non-exceptional trees. That would be any tree that has a 12-inch to 24-inch. That's not exceptional already. And then smaller trees, young trees that are 6 to 12 inches, which basically have no tree protection, are called in tier 4. So 1 is the highest protection, 2 is like today's exceptional, 3 are those trees above 12, and then 4 is everything else below that. The payment in lieu, let's talk about that a little bit, because there's 2 ways of paying. And again, if you have an exceptional tree or that tier 2, they calculate the fee by the square inch of the tree trunk. If it's not, they have a flat fee of $2,833. Say for instance, if you have a tree here that would measure 105 inches in diameter, like a large tree, and you wanted to remove it, it would cost $15,656, which is a pretty good sum of money, but it depends upon, if you're a homeowner, that's a lot of money. But if perhaps you're doing a 6 to 10 unit development, maybe that's easy to get that thing out of the way just by paying that money. Josh also did a little comparison chart. So if you had a large sequoia, huge sequoia, that would be very expensive to pay a fee, which is good. Whereas some of the other smaller trees, the amount comes down. Now, what I want to highlight, what I mentioned before, is that $4,000 to plant and replace a tree. Some of these trees, as you can see, are a bargain to take out, because even the amount that would be paid or being proposed to be paid is less than the amount to actually pay to have that tree installed. And this is the chart that Seattle Parks had issued in November of last year that basically summarized where they came up with that $4,000 budget and the man hours or the person hours to do that work over the summer months.
So sorry, is that per year or per life of the tree?
That is for the first 5 years of the tree. After 5 years of watering, so the initial planting, is about $370 on average. Then to go back every 5 years, where the first looks like the first 2 years they're plantings or they're watering solidly for 5 months. Then as the tree gets into this 5th year, they're kind of backing off on that. So it is like because if you don't, statistics have shown that we're losing about a third to even more of our trees within the first 5 years after planting. Some of you maybe have seen that with some of the new trees planted on streets or as part of development. William, have a question.
Hi, yeah. So I know, like, it's great having increasing our canopy, and just like the loss in Beacon Hill and the disadvantaged areas is huge concern. And I'm wondering, we are kind of facing the legacy of the redlining. A lot of folks down here are new immigrants. We don't speak English very well. I mean, I do, but a large part of the population down here. Is there any funding to help folks navigate this these kind of these tree kind of initiatives? I know, like, for my end, it's cost thousands of dollars just to prune the trees that we've got, and just kind of knowing that like certain things that I guess there are rules, and that there are there's outreach or a way for people who are disadvantaged to take the right measures and to be good citizens about the canopy.
That's a great question, because when I was on the Urban Forestry Commission, it's been brought up several times, especially by our Equity and Justice representative, because people want to do the right thing. Sometimes they just, it's a matter of taking care of your tree or repairing a part of the house, or sometimes, getting the food on the table for your family. So I think that's one of the things I would also recommend the group advocate for. Maria.
I have a question. In the Urban Forestry Commission discussion, was there any thought about having SDOT take care of the trees on the sidewalks? Because if you walk through Beacon Hill, a lot of our homeowners can't afford to take care of those trees, so it cracks the sidewalk which makes it harder for people to ambulate around. And where can funding for that come from?
I just went to this national conference in November as well, and there was from representatives from all different cities, all different countries. I sat next to a fellow from Canada who was saying they actually have now $17 million. This is a smaller, well, it's a large suburb of Vancouver. They have now accumulated $17 million after 15 years of collecting funds, with the idea that they knew they were going to grow, and they knew that their tree canopy was going to shrink. So they're going to collect the money to plant trees where trees could be planted. And I think what has not taken place, Maria, is that type of thought in terms of how to make that happen here in Seattle. So right now, there is going to be the next round of the Urban Forestry Commission after we've got this report in, is trying to figure out, and that's where I think your neighborhood is going to become very important, is trying to figure out where to plant trees, how to plant trees, and where to get the funds for it.
So David, I hear you, but I was wondering, for SDOT to take over the sidewalks, is there any kind of a trend in the nation on doing that?
Well, I came from Chicago, and we had a new tree planted, and the neighbor, it was a smaller community of 50,000 people outside the suburb outside of Chicago, and the community actually paid for, maintaining that tree for the first 5 years. So I think it's a good question, Maria. I think we need to do some more looking in that, especially like some of our cities like Portland, Oregon, who's I think more progressive in that sense.
Thanks, David.
Kevin.
I wanted to ask a question about ivy. There's lots of trees out there that are already well established and growing, but also look like they're within striking distance of being killed by ivy growth, and wondering if that is being addressed, or what a good strategy would be to do that, or how people are organizing to try to deal with that.
I think that's a great question, and it makes me sad to see all the areas where the urban forest is being attacked by the ivy. I have called in not called in, but used what is that, the find it, fix it type of thing. And most of the times I get reports back that they're street trees, I know, but the street trees are the responsibility of the homeowners unless the city planted them specifically. So kind of going back to Maria's point, if we actually had an urban process or urban budget where we'd plant street trees, we'd water them, we'd take care of the ivy situation, I think we'd have a more sustainable approach than right now pointing the fingers back at the property owners, who are often not educated about what if it's their responsibility or if the city's going to do it. Jerry.
I just wanted to say that as far as Kevin goes, there's the Green Seattle Partnership has been working with parks and volunteers all over the city for about 14 years. I've had a small forest on South Beacon Hill that I'm a forest steward of, and we've been working for about 13 years. I know Dee has been very involved north, and our prime goal is doing ivy and blackberry removal and planting trees. We usually plant maybe 100 trees every November or during the planting season. I also wondered a little bit about the how well enforced these tree things are, and it seems to me like every slide was like, unless there's development, and there's development all over Beacon Hill. This is where it seems like most of the development is coming in South Beacon Hill, and which kind of means we need to buy up every piece of land we can down here, I think, and try to do that. Anyway, but
Great. Any other questions before I move on to the next section? Okay, this next section, I think, is what, in my opinion, as an architect, probably the most dangerous in terms of losing our large exceptional trees. And there's different philosophies on that, as we'll share too. So as you kind of know right now, this is kind of a diagram of a typical neighborhood residential lot where there's a large the side yards are only like 5 to 7 feet in terms of setback. there's a front yard setback, usually about 20 feet, and then there's a rear yard setback that's a proportion of the lot depth. And a new, whether you have 3 homes, a house with 2 ADUs, or you just have a single house, it can't really be built in those green areas, as we talked about, the setback areas, unless, of course, you need to protect the exceptional tree. So the leftover area is 50% typically of the overall lot area. Now, when you're living in neighborhood residential zones, you're not allowed to build 50%. You're allowed to build 35%. So you even have more advantage in neighborhood residential zones to have space for vegetation. You don't have that in townhouse areas. There's no maximum lot coverage in townhouse areas as long as you sit within the setbacks. And also in residential small lot, like South Park, say, for example, I think was converted entirely to residential small lot. Their lot coverage maximum is 50%. And what happens usually to the rest of that green area, as you see here, usually becomes like parking, trash areas, or sidewalks. So what is being, and the other thing I want to mention before we talk about this a little bit is that the city is also considering how to measure what's the protections area of a tree. And right now it's basically the tree drip line. So you got a 30-foot roughly diameter drip line of your tree. That's the protection area because it's considered the root area below is about the same as what's above. But they are looking at now maybe making that a little bit larger, and that could actually work as a detriment if we go with this new approach. The new approach basically looks at an example here where this would be a multifamily low-rise zone where you'd have multiple units on a lot. This particular example was a 6,400 square foot lot. And if you had as we'll demonstrate shortly, if you had a large tree, exceptional tree that was maybe on your lot, partially on another lot, you would just kind of position these buildings or where the buildings would go to hopefully miss as many trees as possible, and then also provide some space to plant some trees. So what the city is now proposing is that this was kind of giving development some unanswered feelings. They could look at a site, see if it was for sale, but they're not quite sure if the trees would be able to be removed or retained. So they're coming up with a new formula, which basically says 85, if your trees on your site are more than 15% of the lot area, so that they're anticipating that 85% of the lot would be covered by buildings or pavement or sidewalk or whatever it might be, then that would be determinant that you could take the trees out. So let's say I'm a developer. I see your property, and I see there's a nice big leaf maple in the middle of that property, or even near the edge, and I can roughly guesstimate that tree is maybe, remember, typical saddle residential lots are about 1/3% covered by canopy cover. So I can say if we're using this 15% formula, that boy, I can buy this lot, and I'm pretty sure, well, guaranteed I'm going to be able to take out that large tree because it's going to that big leaf maple, because it's going to be more than the 15%. So what they're trying to do is add some predictability even before the design gets started. So how does that kind of play out? Well, what happens is when we look at that, let's just take the building area and consolidate that in this middle diagram. You end up with about 45% of again, this magic number for always comes through it. 45% of the lot area is covered by structures. The other 55% of the lot is non-structures. Again, parking, trash, all that stuff. So theoretically, and inside yard setbacks, and sometimes those setbacks are not wide enough. Theoretically, when you compare the 55 or you compare this 45 percent lot coverage by the buildings and what's left over, and you compare that to being what's proposed, 85% is quite a large area. In fact, if you were to take a lot and go 2.5 feet setback around it, all the way around, that would be 85% of that lot. So what this means is that, again, if you have large trees in a lot, it's very likely that those trees are going to be able to be removed. In fact, I did a little geometric study. So depending on your lot size, your tree size, you know, the smaller the lot, the smaller your trees on a lot will be. Because if you have a say, for example, in this middle case, if you have a lot that's 6,400 square feet, say, for example, that would mean that the maximum size tree that you would be able to have without being taken out is 35 feet. And you know, if you really have a large tree, like a 50-foot drip line tree, you're going to need a pretty large lot, like a 13,000 square foot lot, or two lot, or maybe that tree is on the center line, which you'll see later, in order for that tree to be saved. But what also happens, as you know, is the process of lot subdivision. So without being controlled, somebody could buy a lot and start to subdivide it, and then say, hey, this leftover tree on this part of the subdivision exceeds that 15%, so I can take that tree out. So it's something that hasn't been looked at, but I do fear it's going to be a consequence of using this kind of formula. And again, just by looking at general lots in typical, or about 45% of it is the building. There's exterior amenity areas and multifamily areas that's usually about 12.5% on the ground, another 12.5% with balcony and roof decks. There's sidewalks, parking, and then there's flexible land. So if 85%, which is this dashed red line, really starts to take its toll in terms of defining what can be protected. Now, here's a real example. It hasn't been built yet, but originally the developer, this one's in near Seattle Pacific University on the left-hand side. Originally, the developer came in with the diagram on the left, where this, the street is towards the top, and there's an alley in the bottom, and there's a large 100-year-old oak tree. The original proposal was to take that oak tree out, take out another tree, put in 2 townhouses and a single-family residence. This is a multifamily area. But the city, the planner, actually required them to revise their drawings, still have the same number of units, still the same area. And by having them revise the drawings, they were able to retain this exceptional tree. And so this approach, if we use the approach of the 85% rule, it's very like it is, I've already calculated that the exceptional tree would be too large and there would be no reason to protect it. So actually what I foresee is with this tree regulations, more large exceptional trees are going to be lost because they don't meet that. And one of the theories is, well, climate change, all of our large trees are going to be dying. It's time for the young new trees to be planted. So maybe there'll be more disease and pest resistant. That's what one of our council members had mentioned. I think everybody's kind of on that bandwagon. But any questions on that particular segment?
Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Not that one. Keep going. Keep going. You had that last slide, and there was a slide before that about the trees are dying.
Oh, let's see.
I went through it. You need to go towards the end. It's the second to the last one you showed.
This one?
Just stay with that. So what is the actual change that they're proposing?
I think what they're suggesting is that it's okay to be by using this 85% hardscape rule. It's okay if we're going to be losing some of our larger trees because we can just replace, we can collect money for those, and then we can plant those, use that money to plant more trees that will be more appropriate for climate change and disease resistant. Now, I'm an architect, I'm not an arborist, so I'm not sure. I've read articles about this, but I'm not quite sure how solid that theory is.
Did the Urban Forestry Commission talk about how you need these large mature trees to hold the carbon sequestration?
Well, thank you for asking that, Maria. I should note that this tree ordinance being proposed has not been reviewed by the Urban Forestry Commission yet. The Urban Forestry Commission is meeting tomorrow. They're going to be talking about it for the first time, essentially. So they're playing catch up, and I think this is certainly one of the items that they should be talking about in terms of is this a good theory that we can start clear cutting parts of Seattle, plant new trees, and it's going to be a healthy urban forest. In my opinion, as an architect, it raises some questions.
Do you have a sense of the schedule of review? I'm sorry, Betty Jean, go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm just stunned. I mean, if they're trying to, the goal for tree canopy is what percentage again?
30% average citywide.
30% average citywide, and yet they're going to make all the neighborhoods only 15% or less. I mean, obviously less, because they're not going to have tree canopy on every square foot of that 15% that's plantable. And if they plant smaller trees there, we're not going to have large trees in the city. If the only ground that's available is this, 5 to 7 foot border, they're all going to be small trees. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, I agree. Mitchell, you have something to add to that additional question?
My partner Sean has a question.
I have a question about the viability of trees that are remaining. Could you please go back a few slides? It says something about a 35-foot tree at the top there. A little more, yeah. That one, I think that's a pretty good picture to show what my concern. A little more.
Yep, a little more.
Yeah, there we go, this one. So if I look at these two pictures here in the center and on the right, I would question, so this tree on the right, that's going to die.
Yes.
Even if we save the tree and build this lot, that's going to die.
Yep.
Because of how the roots are going to be cut for this footprint here.
That's right.
Whereas the center picture, which has now gone, there it is. This one's probably going to make it. It's probably, it would probably be just fine. I mean, obviously you cannot squish all the buildings right on the property line like that. But at the same time, is there any concern given to the viability of, like, we're preserving this tree, but in 10 years, it's going to be dead anyway. I'm not sure that's a great compromise.
Yeah, I am 100% behind that point. Yes.
Do you know if this has been, how this is being addressed, or what's happening there? Or?
Well, I can tell you what Portland, Oregon did, which I again think Seattle should do. If they're going to do something like this, then they need to provide lands. Well, I prefer that large trees are retained when they're in the right place. And like this particular example, I do anticipate, like you're describing, that there could be a reconfiguration of the buildings, make them more efficient, or consolidate them, make them taller versus spread out. That tree could be retained. But what Portland, Oregon has done is they said, and this goes back to a comment made earlier too, that any multifamily property would have to preserve 20% of the lot area for trees. It's not saying that they had to, just said that if you're going to configure this, 20% of that lot area has to be for trees. And for, as you know, they've gone to the no single family zoning 1 or 2 years ago. Any property that has 1 to 4 homes on it would have to have double that amount of area, 40% of the lot for trees. So
I'm sorry, what exactly does that mean?
that means that when you have a lot that you're not that you're only covering 60% of it with structures and driveways and parking spots and trash areas, so that 40%
non-permeable surfaces.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
And like your point, what you just mentioned too, it's not only trees, it's permeable surfaces. So instead of having above grade stormwater, structures, the more permeable surfaces you have, it'll be better, I think. Well, any other thoughts, questions? Did I miss anything? I'm almost done here.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to get involved, or if you want to get involved, if this is something that I feel is an important issue, not necessarily in my lifetime, but for the future generation and generations, is definitely, these are some suggestions offered by the chair, one of the co-chairs of the Urban Forestry Commission, Josh Morris, is to write individual messages or call your council members and the mayor, if you can. Indicate the things that are, I think, important to you. There's some suggestion items here that, again, I can share this PowerPoint afterwards with the group. But, Josh's, his points may not be the same as yours. And again, there's 2 chances to get involved this week. One is Wednesday, as we talked about the Urban Forestry Commission, who is really reviewing this for the first time. And back to your question, Maria, the timeline is, I think that Councilmember Strauss, who chairs the Land Use Committee, would like to get this voted and approved before the budget becomes an issue, so before June. And he's looking at amendments, I believe, for early or this month, in a few weeks, to get any amendments in place, or maybe even only a couple of weeks. But one is to call in your concerns. There's a public comment period at the beginning and the end at 3 o'clock and at 4:50, basically, at the Urban Forestry Commission. There's a WebEx site on their website where you can call in. And then secondly, and probably more importantly, is one of the many public meetings that Councilmember Dan Strauss is chairing is this Friday, if you're available. And that meeting starts, the Land Use Committee starts at 2 o'clock, and you have to register in advance in order to make public comment. And public comment, or you can show up in person. But public comment, if you're going to register and talk remotely, all it is your voice. There's no Zoom, which is fine, but you're only limited to 1 minute. So if you are going to call in as for a common good of Beacon Hill and environmental justice, you may want to do it orchestrated in such a way that you each have 1 minute segments, so that you can have a complete and full story for environmental justice in Beacon Hill and the greater Duwamish area. That's really all I had. And if you're interested, there's a 30-minute video of that program I talked about in November with the Nationwide Arborist Day Foundation And within the middle of that, it's 30 minutes, but there's 3 10-minute segments. In the middle of that is a video that was prepared that's showing how you could have density and new density buildings and preserve tree canopy at the same time. So a couple examples in Seattle.
Oh, in Seattle.
Yep,
Yeah, if you can send that over, that'd be great.
will do.
So, David, can you take down the stop share? Okay, everybody, let's give David a hand for a really good effort. So I just want to announce to everybody that we are putting together a Beacon Hill Environmental Justice Task Force on tree canopy. Lisa Pateska and Jerry Chambers will be leading it. I noticed there was some interest from you. Would you be interested in being part of that? Because we can sketch out the larger issues, the larger needs in our community, but we really need people on the ground to be able to keep track of this. It is so detailed. So I'm just looking around to see who would like to be part of the EJ task force on tree canopy. Come on, Mitchell. You and your partner.
I'm not gonna say. Sean works at a tree company, but he's so busy he can't join. But I'd sure like to encourage him.
Well, Sean, you may be busy, you may not be able to join, but it's really important that we keep the educational going, and you probably can spot things that we don't know in the writing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because this is going to go fast. And I know, Saya, you were with us when we did the exceptional trees inventory. Is this something you want to pursue?
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling that actually my
This is Sean.
hello, it's me.
Oh.
I have a feeling that this is probably already on the radar screen at work. We have someone who's been working pretty carefully with the tree code, and there have been some recent changes. Even just last week, they've made amendments to the new tree code. So things have changed quite a bit. And so, yeah, I have a feeling that we already have someone at work who's kind of got her finger on the pulse of this. So,
Well, our interest is trying to have community voices, because I think our arguments are going to be different than the rest of the city, because we are a tree desert to begin with. So not only are we going to counter, but we may need to ask for exceptions on how we're treated until we can be up to par in terms of health and standard within the city of Seattle. Because the other half of this is we have 3 sources of air and noise pollution. Excuse me, 2 sources of air, noise pollution, roads and airplanes. And then we have internal oil heating and gas heating air quality issues. And a lot of that really is reliant on trees as an infrastructure. So not to put pressure on you, but they are different voices. A company has a different voice than a community. In this instance, it is going to be an environmental justice issue for us. And the good thing is that the city of Seattle has a race and social justice analysis.
mm-hmm.
Is there an email or something that you can forward to me, and then I'll pass it to Sean? And
well, I think the best thing we could do is add both of you guys. Jerry, has been trying to convene us. We have from the north, and we have organizers. Ambian, I'm forgetting his full name, but basically we have 2 organizers on the North Beacon Hill. We might have the Noji Gardens people, tree preservation. We have the brick pits. My hope is some of our park stewards will also join in. I know Dee has her hands full, and so does Jerry, but Jerry's willing to give it a go. And part of it is we're reluctant. That's right, Cliff. We're reluctant to just write on behalf of the community without checking in with community. And this is the venue we use. the community council meetings. Because if you notice, we take on a lot of different issues depending on what we need local communities to help lift in Beacon Hill, but this one covers all of Beacon Hill.
Mhm.
Can I ask, has someone reached out to these these other communities you mentioned earlier, like the Somali community in New Holly, the other African immigrant communities in New Holly, the Vietnamese community, things like this? Has someone reached out to those communities specifically who might have honestly, there might be a language barrier.
Well,
Who can actually with them and get them in the picture here a little more.
so the big picture is that we have been reaching out to with a lot of it is if we have funding. Okay, we have reached out in partnership with El Centro in 2017. We convened 24 meetings in 6 languages so that people can understand air and noise pollution. And then we have a campaign that we hope to do this summer, continuing on the air and noise pollution. So there's the problem of air noise pollution, and there's resiliency, right? Resiliency hubs, the trees, conversion from oil, and we haven't done a policy thing on and gas yet to electric, but those are all the things that would make. So your question is well taken. There's a lot we need to do, but right now we just need to convene this so that we can start weighing in. We have not weighed in on this issue because of capacity. Last year, I mean, just trying to deal with the SeaTac airport expansion has been on our minds because, like I said, they're going to drop the EIS next year. So we're trying to get our community ready. Yeah. But anyway, we can definitely, if you drop your email or send it to Amy, Jerry can get it, and then we'll be able to do, or you can put in chat and Jerry can grab it from chat.
Do you want to put it in here?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so appreciated, and not to pick on people, but these things are really important. And Saya, are you going to be okay? You're going to be in if we start convening that task force?
It's down here.
I'm not sure, how much I can commit. I've been doing a lot of work for Soap Lake Conservancy that's in Central Washington, so I'm a little hesitant, but maybe I'll send it to the group that's been trying to get the park going together and see if somebody wants to be on it. I'm not really sure what the commitment is either.
Yeah, we ourselves don't know. We're just trying to gather people who have similar interests. And then from there, as you well know, with any group, you can have a large group, but usually 5 to 7 will be like your primary learners who are going to learn deep. And then it's bringing the group back to say, okay, we need to write letters or we need to write this and that. Okay, any other questions on this? So David, we're going to kind of lean on you to keep getting information. There's a lot in what you said. I have not read the full report. And, it's pretty complicated, frankly. It's, even if we were clear on what we need, it's the how that's going to be received and what the technical pros and cons that we would comment on that would be very important.
Yeah, certainly. This is a very important time, and especially for those great questions that you had, the group has had about, where would trees be planted? How would trees be planted? Why are trees not being maintained? Can trees be maintained by the city? And can there be funding made available for people who may not have the funds to take care of, who are assumed to take care of the street trees, say, for example, or even trees in their own lot. So a very good conversation today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. One more hand and then we'll get you going so that we can go to the next sexy, very sexy issue of trash cans. Thank you so much, David.
All right. See you later.
Okay. All right, Betty Jean, this is a very important issue, actually. It's part of the infrastructure of health and cleanliness.
Hi. I don't know how this all of a sudden became my issue, but I'll
Our
just share with you my observation. And here's this came to me because, you know, dealing with all of the issues with SDOT and the bike lanes, and it feels like they're gonna, you know, they're focused on making this arterial pedestrian friendly and safe environment. And it's like, okay, great. If you're going to do what you're going to do, then what are you going to do for our community as you do it? And I think the two things that we really need to advocate for in that pedestrian zone is our benches for people who, you know, elders or people who are in recovery that can't walk great distances, to have places to stop and rest, and also to have garbage cans. Because I live south of Columbian Way, and there are no garbage cans between Columbian Way and Benefit Park. And there's a lot of foot traffic, and particularly around the Columbian Way area is a lot of problems with garbage. And I think part of it is just that there's no garbage cans. So I think there is one garbage can at the Seattle supermarket, and that's it. And all along the golf course, same story there. And there's not enough north of Spokane either. So I think that we should really, you know, advocate, okay, let's embrace this pedestrian friendly thing and let's get serious about it. What do you need to make the exterior amenities work for our community? And that includes bringing more services to our community like that. So that's my 2 cents.
Anybody else understanding or experiencing what Betty Jean's talking about? Jerry?
I'm on South Beacon Hill where we have this nice median strip. And when it first was put in, we had lots of garbage cans, and there are benches along that place. And people were kind of abusing the garbage cans, and SDOT took them all out. And that's an SDOT right away. So, and I see at Beacon Hill, I see people bringing big bags of trash and putting it in the park. Putting it in the park garbage cans a lot. So I think it's a great thing. I would love to have garbage cans. And good luck. But we can always ask. All I can say is no, right? Yeah.
Do you know when race and social justice first got started with Greg Nichols, the first project they did was to compare across the city of Seattle what they call infrastructure, sidewalks, lights, garbage cans, and so mailboxes.
Mailboxes.
I think people have gotten away from that. They got to go back to that basic analysis to make sure everybody's getting served. So thanks for bringing that up. So I'm checking in with folks. Am I hearing that a letter is in order to write to SDOT and to Seattle Public Utilities, because they do the pickup for these? It's not enough to just leave it there, you know, and maybe they need more defined garbage cans wherein there's an infrastructure. You can't just steal the can and take it, walk away with it. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask, is this something you want us to send a letter? Raise your hand if you want us to. And then I'll ask you to raise your hand if you don't. Okay, I have 1 vote for it. Oh. Okay, there's 3, there's 4 votes for it, 5.
Cliff is yes.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Got it. All right, it's a go. We'll take it up during the board meeting after this meeting to get a letter out. Thank you so much, everybody. Cliff, You were saying something, I'm sorry. I missed-
One quick thing, as we're talking about garbage cans and stuff, SDOT is also in charge of maintaining the medium as far as cutting it. And I think they need to be reminded that they need to stay on top of that a little bit more. I wrote a couple of letters last year because the grass ended up being about 4 feet tall. And oh yeah, it was bad. I took pictures and everything, and they didn't cut it for months during the summer and everything, and it got real tall. So they need to do a better job of maintaining the medium. That's what that's SDOT handles that.
Okay.
All
And
right.
then I see Kalia, then Kevin, and Megan's hands up. Go ahead, please. Kalia, I guess you put your hand down.
Yeah, I
Megan,
just left over from voting.
thank you. Megan?
Just to tag on, and I'm sorry, I had to jump for a second. I hope I didn't miss something. With Betty Jean, with the benches, the benches that I see putting in around my neighborhood have no rain cover and no tree cover. So you're like just left out there in the elements. I'd be curious if there would be any consideration for pairing those with a tree, like when, during the summer, if folks are sitting there for rest, it's not great if you're still just being hit with all the heat of the sun.
Right, I agree. And I think also, I mean, part of this is what about a lot of the cherry trees along Beacon Avenue, along the median here on the south end are not looking so good. So I think and all along the bike trail, the Chief South bike trail, there's no trees. And I've had a conversation with more than one cyclist about it would be really nice in the summer to have some shade along that. And I realize that the power lines are there, but they're small trees and it's a wide space. Those should be target areas for additional trees in my mind.
Got it. So we need to figure out strategically when to ask for what and in what context. Okay. Any other comments on trees? Okay. Well, not just on trees, but garbage cans and so forth. Okay. It's about 8:20 and we were gonna stop at 7:40 to just say thank you and any announcements so that we could adjourn. I'm just so appreciative of you hanging in and learning with us such complicated issues that we need to get a handle on. So any last words or announcements? Okay. Roberta, thank you for saying I need to go, but I appreciate the information. And also, David Mooring put in the chat box how to get involved. So we'll copy that and we'll make sure that we'll send it. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? And then Lorenzo, we'll do a follow-up with you to see if you might have some ideas on what we can do to help Duwamish and ourselves, because a certain part of Beacon Hill really is exposed to the flights also from King County International Airport with the small powered planes. Okay.
Absolutely, Maria. Thank you.
So appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay. All right, everybody. With that excitement that we started in the beginning, go have your dinner and keep excited. I mean, we do these things for the beloved community, and our community takes care of us. So I'm going to say good night to you folks, and we'll ask the Beacon Hill Council members to stay so we could do follow-up work on the tree recommendations as well as the garbage can recommendations.